Hello, everyone to Forest Focus, as we're all reminded what it is to be a Nottingham Forest fan after that collapse of Swansea City last night. Will Burnley bring better? Who should start? Who might not be starting any game soon? We'll discuss all that and more in the company of, first of all, Michael Temple. Temps, good morning. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Nice to chat Forest with Ali Martin. We always have a little natter in the Trent Bridge press box about what's going off, but not so hot yesterday.
No, well, we'll get into that, certainly. Yes, Ali Martin, Guardian cricket writer, Forest fan. You've made one appearance. This is your second appearance. It's been too long between them. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. That first appearance, I think, was FA Cup, wasn't it? But this, we're now previewing a Premier League game. I feel like I've stepped up into the first team squad. This is quite daunting.
Yeah. Well, I saw you were disappointed Pete's not here, so yeah.
I was just saying he was my life draft. I just thought he'll talk for so long and so well and so eloquently that it would just sort of be a great buffer, and I'll just say, yeah, I agree with Pete.
Well, the so long part's certainly right. I'm sure he's watching this. Temps, kick us off. We'll do general thoughts on last night. I've got a list of things I want to talk about, and then we'll get into Burnley. But what did you make of last night in general?
Credit to Swansea for their spirit and the manner in which they won it. I don't think anyone will catch a shot as sweetly as that or a rebound as sweetly as that, as long as I watch football. Or having said that, the Arsenal opener on Saturday wasn't far from either, was it? So yeah, they deserved and worked to turn that game around. Was it a little precursor to what Ange Postecoglou can be? This kind of reckless attacking intent when you're trying to manage out the last stages of a cup tie probably isn't too clever situationally. But we are seeing the impact of his management, those tweaks in style, and it's far too early to tell if that's going to work with this profile of squad or not. But I did come away crediting Swansea. I think that they worked their way back into that game, and it was a half chance at best, wasn't it? How often are you going to be able to adjust your feet and swing your left foot through that and catch it in the way that Burgess did in the 96th minute? But so many lessons to learn, the biggest one being in game management, situation management, and seeing those things out when you find a lead against weaker opposition.
Yeah, I want to talk about the keeper a bit, certainly as we go on. What did you make of it, Ali, in terms of probably more stuff around how Ange managed the game? Any concerns, or is it one way you think 9 times out of 10 we win that game and it was a bit of a freak?
Well, I think at full time I sent a message to a couple of people. And it was just one word, and it just said Spursy. And I feel terrible for saying that. I quite like Tottenham. I quite liked Tottenham under Ange to a degree, but it felt to me like a bit of a hammer blow, to be honest. Partly because he's come into the job. It's most managers start jobs when it's a kind of rebuild. They've got to build from a low base. He's obviously come in, into a club that's had its best season for 30 years. But with a reputation for teams that are great going forward, but can be a bit flaky at the back. And as you say, game management can be lacking at times. And so I think for that, obviously Arsenal was his first game, and that was a particularly tough one to start with. But in terms of where he sort of said, this is one where he actually gets to work with the players and, and start to sort of bring his messages through, I thought for that result to happen was a bit of a hammer blow for him. And it just continues what has been, a real roller coaster start. I can't remember a start to the season like this, to be honest. I was engrossed in India, England during the transfer window, during the summer. So I was kind of just watching the names come in and out. But I thought, we recruited pretty well here. First time we came up, we threw all that mud at the wall, enough of it stuck. But this time it felt like really calculated recruitment. I thought we probably just lacked buying another centre-back. But apart from that, we seem to have covered every position off really well with some really promising players. And then for all the stuff that's gone on in the background, Nuno and then leaving, that obviously we got the win on the first day of the season, which went against our pre-season form. But then the West Ham game just knocked the stuffing out of everyone, really. And then this just feels like another blow, and we're just kind of waiting for the season to start in a way.
I think my thing about last night, Temps, is I questioned sort of how suicidal it was from us in terms of how we managed the game. I don't remember Swansea peppering the goal. When I look at it, we conceded from a corner, which we'll talk about Boly. Second goal was a mess with Boly, Yates, the keeper. Third goal, he pinged it. But I don't remember Swansea like throwing waves and waves at us. I thought we should have scored a load of goals. There was a break, which was ridiculous, where it was 5v2. And that was the thing that made me worry. But when I watched it back, that came from Galbraith, who Pete mentioned in the preview and looked decent. He ran past Yates too easily. He ran past Savona too easily. Morgan was on a booking and should have taken him down, but couldn't because he would have been off. So I wonder if it's more players than managers. Where do you put the balance between players at fault, manager didn't manage the situation well?
There's a situation where we win that game quite comfortably by taking those second half chances. McAtee was guilty. Callum Hudson-Odoi had a half chance. There was a marginal offside. So the attacking intent was there for all to see. And I think that you do go into games like that, trying things, knowing that against a lower caliber opposition, you'd presume you're not going to be punished in quite the same way. I'm talking probably specifically about the manner in which Zinchenko moved into a central midfield position in possession, the license that was given to the central midfielders to be more attacking. We still saw Savona overlapping quite effectively for that early goal. There was pretty relentless attacking intent. So I do see players taking on board instruction from Ange, but needing time to understand the flip side of that, which is defensive resilience. And that's why he's got such a big challenge. Our season last year was built around only conceding 35 goals in 38 games. I think Spurs conceded 65. Yes, we weren't quite as exciting as an attacking force and did win some games by slim margins, but trying to marry the backbone of that side that have had that style, a manager who prides himself on doing what he does and sticking to it quite stubbornly, is going to take some time to settle. But let's give him some credit. If McAtee finishes his dinner last night, it's 4-2 home and hosed, a very different result. So don't really feel the need to apportion blame to anyone. This is the embryonic stages of a relationship between a manager and a group of players after a sacking that wasn't football related. And it's going to take some time to settle. But Burnley will be no easy proposition now, and their tails will be up.
Would have been an interesting, if it was in the Premier League, how VAR impacted the game would have been interesting. Because I thought they should have had a penalty in the first half for Boly's challenge. And I thought Callum Wendo was onside for when he scored, and potentially when he went through as well, and the guy took him down, and it was offside when it would have been a red card. So there's lots of different factors at play. Another one's the subs, Ali, that when Nuno got flack for his subs a lot. A couple of people on about Ange's subs last night. Why take Jesus off? Why take other players off? I've got them here. I just went through them. Jesus and Morato came off at half time. Luiz and Bakwa came off after 62. For Morgan, who we'll discuss whether he was a plan to get him into some form or not, I'm not sure. And then McAtee for Sangare, 84, probably the only defensively minded sub. Do you read much into those when you look at the players that came off at the times they did? Are you feeling they were pre-booked in, these subs are going to happen no matter what? Or do you think that he should have really nailed the game down and then make changes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what an extra 10 minutes would have done for someone like Igor Jesus, for example, who could have stayed on a little bit longer. That struck me as one that was, made with an eye on the weekend. I know we'll come on to our teams, but I haven't got him in my team. But I've got a feeling that Ange possibly has an eye on that. And obviously 2 goals. He had a great game. But yeah, I don't know about the substitutes. Every substitution made sense in and of itself, but it also, you've got to bear in mind from the start of the game, and actually the first 2-3 minutes of the game, they looked like a bunch of strangers playing together, and that's because they were. Like, this is a team that had never played together before. A goalkeeper with 4 defenders in front of him who he's never worked with before. But actually, they actually kicked in the game and got quite a nice flow going. The second goal was superb football. I thought, blimey, this is exactly, the kind of thing that we can get on board with the new manager and that sort of style of play. But I don't know. I thought the big one was Douglas Luiz, and actually, if that one's been made with an eye on the weekend and he starts and I put him in my team, then I don't really have an issue with it. I thought we did lose control of midfield when he came off, but I was hugely encouraged by his performance. And actually, as a player who I don't know a huge amount about, because I'm very much a Forest fan, right? So my bandwidth is just my own club, and so I quite like to sound out supporters of other clubs for their sort of appraisal on a player whenever we sign them. And the report card that's come back from Douglas Luiz is he is a serious player, and he should, in theory, be an upgrade to that starting 11. A lot of our signings have been made with an eye on the future or developing players. he looks like a plug and play first 11 Premier League player. And so again, would another 10 minutes have killed him? I don't know. But with it being done with an eye on the weekend and with the league being, where we've really got to sort our form out, I didn't have a huge issue with that one.
Do you think Temps, in a way, rightly or wrongly, feel free to weigh in, rightly or wrongly, he treated it a little bit like his only pre-season friendly, where he can just look at players for 45 minutes? You can't do that in the Premier League, but maybe he thought he could in the Carabao Cup.
He did the right thing in that sense, didn't he? He would have asked players just to be themselves, bide their time and be patient for their opportunity. But they need minutes to show what they can do, and there'll be winners and losers from that. I think Douglas Luiz, as Ali said, is the big winner. Very surprised if he doesn't come into our side very soon and form that trio centre mid with Gibbs White and Elliot Anderson. That just excites me. I think it's really, really dynamic. I think Bakwa has played himself into the Premier League start conversation. There's not too much between him and Dan Ndoye. And whilst Hudson-Odoi's place seems assured, I think there's a battle will develop pretty soon between those two. I thought Zinchenko looked assured on the ball. You can see why he's been part of successful teams, and we'll get his opportunity off the back of Ola Reina's injury. So Zinchenko, Bakwa and Luiz are the three that stuck their hands up last night. It gave me no pleasure to see Ryan Yates struggle in the way that he did. I don't think that's down to ability or any of the battering he's getting online. He had a bad game. It happens. But yeah, he would have wanted to take the opportunity to impress, and he didn't, sadly. I take no pleasure in saying that, because I think that having him in and around the first team squad from a values perspective and the contribution that he's made over the last couple of years is important. But there's no disguising the fact that he had a poor 90 minutes. So yeah, they're the three that I want to see considered, and I wouldn't be entirely surprised if we didn't see all three of them involved against Burnley.
Yeah. We'll get into our lineup. We'll talk in a second about the players that struggled and might struggle a bit more under Ange. Just before we do that, a word for Trent Navigation. Coming up on Wednesday, obviously, Betis versus Forest. You can watch it at the Nav, and they've teamed up with Madri. They're giving away hundreds of free pints, one per person, I think. So if you get down between 6 and 7, you'll get the chance for a free pint of Madri. It's a happy hour between 6 and 8 p.m. So you'll get discount beers, and then you can watch the game if you're not out there or watching it on TV at home. You don't need to book, just turn up on the day and enjoy what is going to be a very special occasion, I'm sure. Let's talk about the players that struggled on the night then. Ali, Ryan Yates is probably the one that always people have their take on. What did you make of him last night? And probably more importantly, what do you make of him going forwards under Ange?
He had a struggle. I mean, I think that's pretty well documented. The thing with Yates is that he's a really important player for Forest, and it doesn't necessarily mean he's an important player in the first team. But in terms of that link to the academy and the link from the journey that Forest have been on for the last 3 or 4 years, he kind of is that one remaining piece. He is a hugely passionate player, and he wears, there are some players that come in and out of clubs and just stick the badge on, kiss the badge, but it doesn't mean much. This means everything to Ryan Yates, and that makes him quite an emotional player. I think it makes him quite a volatile player at times. I think his form can lurch accordingly. I think there was probably a bit of extra desperation there last night. So, and that kind of, maybe held him back a bit. But in terms of long run, I still see him as an important squad player, an important part of the club. He is a guy that puts the armband on when he gets his chance as well. So no sort of long-term concerns. And I'm not going to join in with the pile-on other than to say, yes, he had a poor game and he'd probably be the first one to hold his hands up to that.
Yeah, he's played 99 Premier League games. I'm confident he'll get 100, certainly under Forest, Forest. I don't think he'll start many times under Ange. I think my take on Yates is, and this probably applies to Sangare, Carvalho, Ben Osborne, increasingly Morgan Gibbs White, even, the players that divide opinion. I think there's always a desire to be proved right. And I'm probably guilty of this as much as anyone. People who really strongly believe Yates is crap jump on games like that and say he's rubbish, he's a championship player, he's not good enough. I mean, I think he's had 3 really good years in the Premier League. He's survived. He's literally the sole survivor of the team that went up. And if you ask players literally you ask Toffolo and you ask Worrell when they were on the podcast, who's the most underrated player in the squad, and they'll say Yates. So I do think he's got a definite part to play. I don't think he should be starting games in the Premier League. I don't think he's first sub. I think he's probably 5th or 6th when everyone's fit. I think he's behind Dominguez and all that kind of stuff. But he really struggled last night. Quite a few players struggled, but I don't think he's a dud or anything like that. I think he's got a definite role to play. The question as well is, what role does he want to play come January or come the end of the season? At 27 years old, does he want to be 5th or 6th choice midfielder? Perhaps not. So I said this last night, if he doesn't fit under Postecoglou's style, and I really doubt question if he does, and I think the same goes for Sangare, then if he goes in January or goes at the end of the season, I think that's fine. I think he's had a great career at Forest. He's proven himself time and time again. And maybe this style of football is a leap too far. Maybe Ange Postecoglou stinks it up for 3 months and Ryan Yates is back in the picture. But I think the vociferous nature of the criticism of him and other players, it gets over the top. But yeah, he had a bad game last night. But I think we read too much into things about him and about other players. And like I say, I'm probably guilty of it as well with players that have played for the club. But I think a bit of a step back and a bit of patience is probably fine for me on Yates and quite a few of these players. And we'll mention a few other names. But yeah, what do you think, Thames?
Ryan Yates has got an elite mindset and the biggest heart in the club. But then Douglas Luiz turns up, he's played for Brazil and he can do everything. And that's the brutality of football at this level. There's always someone better after your spot. So make no mistake about it. This is Ryan Yates' biggest test, both in terms of the style of the manager and the quality of the players that are around him. And if it moves past him, I'll always celebrate everything he's done for us, but he'll keep fighting. This is the 4th or 5th time that Ryan Yates has been momentarily written off, and he's ploughed his way back into the team. He's found a way to be relevant, to contribute, to be ready when he's called upon. But he's never had this level of competition for his position.
Do you think he, Temps, is a player playing this style of football, trying to play in the top half of the Premier League? Is he really going to be a starter week in, week out or ever or not, do you think?
No, if this is the transition towards possession-based football and trying to have the swagger and behaviour of a team that feels and knows it belongs in the top 8, then no, you need to have 2 of those facets of score goals, make goals, stop goals. And he's very effective at one of those, right? He's hung his hat on being a defensive midfielder, a bit of an enforcer, a means of protecting the likes of Elliot Anderson and Gibbs White, who want to run games. Ryan Yates is never going to do that. But I do come back to that kind of heart and soul and defining what a culture in a club should be and what the history is. It does get you so far. There are additional points for that, but it's not enough when Brazil's central midfielder rocks up. So no, I'm trying to think what would be our most defensive setup. If we were to go to Liverpool away, would Ryan Yates start in the way that he did last year and try and do a job on forget the central midfielder that he battered?
McAllister. He did a job on McAllister.
Battered McAllister for 60, 70 minutes. No, he probably won't with the company that he's keeping now in central midfield. I do think that the type of game that last season you would have called a Ryan Yates game, there's less clamour for that now, simply because he's surrounded by better boys at the training ground.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's still getting teams in the lower end of the Premier League. The question is where, as in a start of 38 games, the question is, are we beyond that? Do you think we're running a bit before we can walk as well, Ali, in terms of Temps talks about the swagger of a top half team and all that kind of stuff? I know that's what the owner wants us to be. Are we trying to climb the ladder a bit too quick by going from Nuno to Ange and trying to be that team, or are you happy with the way we're going about it?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, the whole thing's been accelerated, hasn't it? You know, the foot's been on the accelerator far heavier than we expected. You know, we thought it was going to take a good few seasons just to try and establish ourselves as a team that wasn't going to be flirting with relegation. And last year, it was just such a revelation last season that, I don't know, is it coming too quickly? I don't know, because this all goes back to, you know, the internal politics. The fact is that, you know, Nuno was supposed to be Forest manager this season, wasn't he? He signed a new deal at the end of the season, and that was all hunky-dory. the issue I've probably got, and I find it bizarre. Like, again, this is just, obviously I work in the industry of cricket, and so I kind of, football is mainly my sort of field of enjoyment. But this trend that sort of started in the late 90s in football of bringing in directors of football above managers, and for them not being aligned, I just find it bizarre how often it happens and how often it backfires. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it even comes down to, it probably does in part come down to recruitment. There's clearly a difference in philosophy between the sporting director and the manager there. And I just find it bizarre that that's been imported at a time when they've just doubled down on the manager. So I don't know. I'm sort of at a loss to kind of explain whether this is too fast in terms of progress or whether we should have been consolidating after last year, because, we're all ambitious. Everyone wants this club to be moving forward and try and, what did we win last year? One game from behind. So, we had very much a style of play, and we probably did get found out at the end of last season. So there was a case to be made for an upgrade. But the fact it's now coming under a new manager is kind of, it's throwing me.
Yeah. Is it? I mean, it's a bit of a baseball thing. Is it, Temps? I don't know. High risk, high reward, the way we're going about it, do you think?
Yeah, it is, right? So the popular lazy analysis was that we're going to win or lose games 3-2, 5-4, or 6-5, and in the last 3 games we've conceded 9 goals. And I just think that, having seen that this set of personnel can deliver results in a low scoring, low concession style, that needs to be embraced. We need to be dynamic. The last thing I want is for Ange Ball to fail in a stubborn manner. I want it to work, obviously, but you've got to be situationally aware. I've spoke before about Milenkovic and his strengths when the play's in front of him, and conversely his weakness when the ball's in behind and he's hacking Harry Kane or finding himself in bother as he did against Arsenal. Look, it is still too early to tell. It's a weird run of fixtures as well with the trip to Betis, with the games that we've got coming up against the Premier League teams that we're going to play in short order. I really, really want it to work. And I want to see with my own eyes the signs that it's going to, because they haven't been apparent yet in these early showings.
Yeah,
Go on, Ali. I think they sort of were last night, but go on, Ali.
Yeah, well, no, it was just on that baseball point, because that is, Ange is on record in the past talking about, England's test side and his love of baseball. He's fully on board with that. For him, it's not just about how, it's about it's not just about the results, it's about how you do it. And he clearly is an idealist. He wants to play the beautiful game, and he wants free flowing football. But again, one of the charges that kind of gets thrown at Basball when it does go wrong is that lack of sort of nous and ruthlessness, etc. So he's kind of living up to that. But the one thing I noticed from last night, and this was just from reading the reports, is that the BBC reporter is stood outside waiting for Ange to come out and do his media, and here's Ange giving the players, an absolute gobful in the dressing room afterwards. And I kind of, it probably goes back to that point about it being the worst possible kind of result for Ange, given everything that gets thrown at him. So you can see why he's frustrated, but that isn't actually Bazball. That is not the mentality of the England test team. This is an absurd analogy just to cross sports here, but it is very weird to hear him sort of lumped in with that, and to say that he's someone who loves that approach. And yet at the first sign of it going wrong, suddenly the teacups are being thrown around the dressing room. So I found that interesting, but who's to say? I couldn't profess to know the dressing room dynamics of the Forest side at the moment, but it's it did sort of raise an eyebrow, put it that way, to hear the manager dishing out early.
I think one of the reasons that I'm less worried about last night in general going forwards as well, Ali, is as long as we don't get injuries and we don't see some of these players playing regularly in the Premier League, I would hope that we don't concede those goals. I mean, I suppose Willy Boly's the other one of the old guard who had an absolute stinker last night. I was surprised he played. I suppose it's the same question as Yates, but longer term, do you see Willy Boly having much of a role?
No, to be honest, which is hard. I mean, he's been a good servant in some ways. He's stepped up. I think he's sort of. I don't know what his own personal ambitions are. Whether this is a lifestyle he's very comfortable with, being a kind of reserve, being a cup player, dipping in for the odd game. I don't know the bloke, so I don't know what his ambitions are. But there is part of me that I watched his mistakes last night, and you're right, he should have given away a penalty. That should have been a penalty in the first half that he gave away as well. And I just thought to myself, I would, if this is a cup game, and if we are resting and rotating, and we're keeping legs sort of, keeping our powder dry for the weekend, and we're playing reserve players. I would far sooner that a young player from the academy is making those mistakes and learning from them. I don't know what a 34-year-old Willy Boly making those mistakes really adds anything, if you see what I mean. So he isn't a long-term investment. It's nothing against the guy. It might be that maybe he finds a new home in January. It might be a sort of division below, but yeah, it's very. I mean, I think this is really harsh. I called him Boly filler to my brother just because he's just filling a gap, right? It's just that seems to be his role now. If he's cool with that, and I'm sure he gets a good wage, and good luck to him. But I just, in terms of the progress of the team, I feel like we could learn more from a younger player coming through. And as I say, even if they're making those mistakes, they're mistakes that they'll learn from.
I don't think he necessarily needs to play. I think one thing that Willy Boly brings to the dressing room is modern language skills. He speaks 6 European languages, and he's a bit of a linchpin and a part of the leadership because of the way he carries himself rather than what he does on the field. So the obvious question is, does he need to be on the field? Is he a coach in waiting, a mature figure in that dressing room that does more than he plays? He does look cumbersome. I think that's the great pun. Ali, you've created there with your journalistic pen, but it's accurate, isn't it? There's not too many situations that you're going to bung Willy Boly into when you're chasing progress in Europe or Premier League points.
I wish I thought of Boly filler. That's pretty good, to be fair. Yeah. Just looking at the goals quickly then, Temps, as we go through them. We'll talk about our goals a little bit, but I suppose we focus on the negative because we lost the game. Who are you looking at for each goal as you rattle through your head? Is it all Boly, Yates, Boly, the keeper? Will I go through them in my head quickly? What went wrong?
Well, back in the keeper for the third one, could he have been a bit closer to the stick? Could his starting position have been better? Because I don't think he could have got down any quicker than he did. You'll never catch a ball that sweetly in all of your days, especially when it's off the back of pretty much perfectly struck shot towards the top corner from 25 yards out. So I'm less critical of the keeper there. I know you said Matt Sells would have saved it, and he probably would. And I may be assessing the dive rather than the starting position, but I just think that was a worldly strike. The deftness of the finish at the front post was world class. I think Michael Dawson said in the studio afterwards, if Harry Kane had glanced that past the keeper and over Willy Boly, he'd be lauded the world over. It's collective responsibility, isn't it? It's not about any individual moment for me. It's about the intensity of the team and the priorities of a team that are winning a cup tie and still wanting to have some kind of training ground experiment rather than just marshal ourselves through to the next round. And it is a disposable game in that sense. If someone said in the comments, I think Paul Morley said, if you're going to have a meaningful opportunity, close to a friendly as you're going to have, it's going to be this one in the first round that we enter of the League Cup. But I think we could have given it more respect when we found ourselves ahead in the game. We had high quality personnel in there, and that collective defensive intensity and game management was lacking.
I mean, I'll cheat a little bit because I texted James Belshaw because I thought the keeper should have saved the third goal, and I asked him, and he said he thought his Sells would have saved it. He questioned his positioning because he had a lot of time to get set. It cannoned off the bar, and he had a good look at it. And also, I didn't ask Belly about this, but the second goal, like he's lying on the ground, and he gets to the point, like, yeah, it's a great finish, but he's completely sold himself for me. So and his kicking made me so nervous. Maybe that's his style and his Brazilian upbringing, but take any more time if you want, mate. I mean, that made me a bit worried about him. Yeah.
He didn't fail there, did he? So I think the text I sent you, he's either the coolest cat in Brazil or he's a heart attack waiting to happen, because he was not leaving much margin for error with some of those passes to the fullbacks.
No, I agree. And I'm a little bit twitchy about Savona. I need to see a bit more of him as well. He grew into it after it. He's good. He looks good going forwards for his size. He's not what I thought he was going to be, but I'm just waiting to see more of him. He's going to get minutes anyway because, Zinchenko and Nico can't play every game. Anything else you want to say about this game, Ali, before we move on to Burnley? I mean, the quality of our goals, maybe we should reference, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I thought the build-up for the second was superb. In terms of the keeper, he looked more comfortable than Carlos Miguel at Exeter last year. And he's just made, this is a big career move for him. It's not to diminish the Brazilian league, because obviously we pull a lot of talent from there, but it's a huge move to cross the Atlantic and move into European football. And I was looking at his record. He had the record for the highest number of clean sheets in the Brazilian top flight last year. I think he was on 9 this season when we signed him, which was 3rd in the league. So there's everything there to suggest that he's a very competent goalkeeper. And I think judging him on a kind of midweek evening game away at Swansea, a team in the league below and stuff, it's far too early to judge him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I am banging his performance, but we can't judge him. Carlos Miguel's first game against Newcastle, I thought he did really well, and then he only got 2 more games. It's a really tough role to be second choice keeper who's not going to get many minutes, I would imagine, especially as that was one of the competitions where he would have got minutes as well.
Yeah, and especially, as I said earlier, about having a completely fresh back four in front of you. So much of it is to do with that relationship between the goalkeeper and his centre-backs. One more point I was going to make on last night, and it was on Zinchenko, who I'm really excited about, but I'm also kind of like, I don't know, a bit nervous about as well. When we signed him, I messaged an Arsenal season to get hold of a friend of mine, and I said, what's the lowdown on this guy? And he said, look, he's technically excellent on the ball. He's got an absolute wand of a left foot, but he said you will lose count of the number of times you look up in a game and he is not where you expect him to be. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. But I was pretty encouraged by last night. I think his delivery, I think his left foot is actually going to add a lot. I think personally, I've felt like Neco Williams and Callum Hudson-Odoi down the left-hand side, both sort of natural right footers. I know Neco's kind of both footed, but I've always felt that we've been a bit kind of cut off down that wing, and actually having a proper left winger or a left footer in there rather. I know he was picked up right at the end of the transfer window. It's a bit like, you're at the petrol station, you think, I might as well grab some screen wash while I'm here. But he's suddenly, from being one of the last guys through the door, he suddenly now looks really central because of the injury to El Araina. He's now really central to the next few months of football. And then, encouraged, but also find him. He's an interesting, weird, kind of cool, kind of, what's he doing there kind of player.
He's going to be fun, but Patch Adams has put in what I was going to say. If you're the left centre-back, you're going to have to do some running because he's going to wander into midfield and leave spaces and he attempts, but he's going to be fun to watch, I guess.
Well, did we get a bit of a vision on how he might be deployed? He was Trent Alexander-Zinchenko last night, wasn't he? Spending more time strolling in the 6th position than he was at left back. Look, if that works and you create overload, it's a really positive thing. Downside being exposes your centre-backs, drags them wide, and does make it harder to recover if your central midfielders are that more advanced. So I don't know. I suppose my method of playing football and understanding football isn't as developed as Ange's, but I like to have attacking fullbacks in the classic sense, overlapping their wingers. And I'm not completely sold on this inversion tactic. And I think it's a huge departure from what we're used to. Echo everything Ali said. I think on the ball, he looks calm and assured, and the modern fullback does need to go forward. But I'd like to see him doing that while providing width rather than trying to nudge Elliot Anderson and Douglas Luiz further up the field.
350 people with us, which is lovely, especially as we were live last night, pretty late. So do hit like if you haven't already. That'd be great. Let's talk more about Burnley then. It feels like a big game, Ali. There's going to be I always think, the narrative, if we lose, is going to be pretty brutal. If we win, then we're suddenly feeling quite optimistic going into Betis and Sunderland. So how big is this game for you?
Yeah, it is a really big game. I mean, you obviously say you don't want to lose, a point away from home is always a good point, etc. But I do feel like this collection of players now needs a bit of a statement performance, so that everyone can just settle down into their roles and into their, and the fan base particularly can settle down, because this has been a hugely unsettling start to the season, which I mentioned earlier. So it does feel like a big one, and actually it feels like a big one for some individuals, and we'll probably come on to the starting 11 shortly. But I feel like this is a big game for Morgan Gibbs-White. I'm assuming that he's going to start, because again, I look at Morgan Gibbs-White, and he's been. I was so excited when we initially signed him, and he's become such a central part of the team. But his kind of form last season did reflect our overall form in that he faded towards the end. I think probably his best performance was second half in the semi-final against City, and that it might have been because that's who he thought he was going to be joining. But to have that interest over the summer and sign that new massive contract. Now, I've told you before, I'm a massive 94-95 is when I really got the bug that season, and we sold our number 10 that year. But this time we didn't, right? So we qualified for Europe, and we kept hold of the bloke with the number 10 on his back, and we gave him a brand new contract. It is a massive contract. You kind of notice these more when it was a transfer fee involved in a move, that this is a big moment for that player. But this contract is a massive moment for Morgan Gibbs-White in his career. He's moved up to an elite level of player in terms of the money that he's being paid. And I guess I hoped on the back of that this season that we would see him really step up and kick up a gear. It hasn't quite happened yet, but I'm feeling like a kind of statement performance should hopefully be around the corner, because he's it's a big role. He's been invested in. The owner has backed him massively and has kept him out of the clutches of other clubs, and he's been rewarded for that with a massive contract. But now we want the flip side, which is we want performances and commanding performances for the club that he's now leading.
Yeah, I agree. We'll get into our teams in 1 second. Just I'll throw one more at you, Temps, because I think Ali's the phrase you settle down is probably a really good one, because we're all trying to stay patient. We're all preaching patience as fans. It's quite difficult, isn't it? But I guess if we can settle down and get that win, it changes the dynamic a lot. But it's hard to kind of watch on and feel like this could go either way at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I was asked a few times what we want to see from Ange coming in, and we have been rather spoiled over the majority of the last 18 months. We want to see our team win, and I don't think there's too much concern about the manager's decisions on formation, tactics, and selection, as long as that happens. And the longer the winless streak continues under the new manager, the more the narrative forms, the more the naysayers prosper. And it creates instability. It leads to experimentation and change. And one of the hallmarks of our period of flying in and around last Christmas and after was that the fans, the management, the players knew the 11 that were going to be selected, knew how they were going to play, and just loved that model of consistency that they produced. And we don't feel that at the minute. We're a team and a club that's been disrupted. We all hope for the better and things will settle down, but we want to see it with our own eyes. So for me, a win against Burnley, just to shake this narrative that, Ange is a reckless attacking manager and doesn't possess the tactical subtlety, that can all be arrested with a positive result. So much to look forward to over the next few weeks. But I think the expectation and the supportive view at our football club has changed off the back of significant overachievements, some might say, over the last couple of years. And 3 points is literally all that matters.
I think it's a tricky game though, Ali, isn't it? I don't know if you saw the Liverpool game. Burnley look well set up. I'm confident we won't lose the game, or as confident as you can be with the way we're playing. But in terms of winning the game, there's certainly no guarantees, are there? This is a game where we have to respect the opposition as well as appreciating we're not in a particularly good place at the moment.
Yeah, I was in Thames's backyard at Trent Bridge watching the rainfall on covers and that complete washout in the final T20 against South Africa. So I was looking up, and there was the Liverpool Burnley game was up on the screen. It's pretty deflating for them as well. I mean, they played really well. They set up, you can see that they set up, well, frustrated Liverpool, and it kind of took, it was a blatant handball, but it was it took that penalty in the last minute for Liverpool to get the point. So clearly they're not going to be, any kind of pushover. But there is part of me, because bear in mind, I'm just a fan here, right? So I kind of, and what follows reflects poorly on me rather than on Burnley. But Burnley are in a collection of clubs and this is ridiculous because they got into the Premier League before we did in terms of that, our sort of 20-25 year break from the Premier League. But they're in a collection of clubs where when we come up against them, I'm just like, what are you doing here? And that is based on a 30-year-old me, 30 years ago, and the fixtures at the time and the league table at the time, and the Burnley were, bottom of the Championship, and I can't shake that. That's my problem. I've got to deal with it. There's only two teams I actually respect. That's Man United and Blackburn Rovers, who finished above us that season. But everyone else below, I think, well, yeah, it should be 3 points.
Well, fair enough. You must be gutted when we lost 3-0 to Arsenal then.
Oh, mate. Oh, and the West Ham game. Oh, don't get me started.
Yeah, let's not revisit that. But yeah, that was the low. I hope that was the low point in the West Ham game.
Well, all I really know about Burnley is I knew they had Dyche as a manager at one point. They had Vincent Kompany. Chris Wood used to play for them. I know he scored twice in his last game against them, which is why he's in my 11. And I'd quite like to know where Scott Parker gets some of his clothes from. But that's pretty much it. And I watched them a bit against Liverpool. They look well organised. So that's all I got for you, I'm afraid.
Don't forget Robbie Blake.
Robbie, yeah.
Good shout.
Mid-90s, yeah. Right. Let's go into our teams. But just before we do that, a quick word of thanks for Home Move Estate Agents. If you're looking to buy or sell in the Notts area, do check the link in the description. You can call the number on screen or email ben@homemoveea.co.uk if you're looking to sell, or as I say, click the link and you can see what's on offer on their website at the moment. They are, of course, 5-star rated on Google. Right. Temps, you just put in the final in the private chat. I always panic on this being in the private chat. It's urgent, and you just put wicket not given. Is this a VAR thing for Notts or something?
This is I balance the amount of cricket I talk on this podcast, but everyone knows how much Trent Bridge and Notts mean to me. We're playing Surrey today with a chance to take a commanding lead in the county championship. If they beat us, they're in that same position. So I am nervously glancing up at the streaming of Notts v Surrey at the Oval. So yeah, apologies for that. I was ready to appeal with Dylan Pennington there.
That's all right. I thought you said I've got to go in 2 minutes or something. So no, that's all right. Right, let's go to some lineups then. Got two for you. We'll do Ali's first, and then we'll do mine and Pete's, and Temps can critique them. So Ali's team is as follows: Sells in goal, Williams, Milenkovic, Murillo if fit, and I'll ask him who his sub is if Murillo is out. And
Davies has made mistakes here, Ali. You can't be happy with this.
Pretty 50-50. I don't think I've made mistakes. Well, if I've made a mistake, Ali's made a mistake. Zinchenko, Douglas Luiz. I'll put Williams in twice. I have made a mistake. That should be Anderson. I don't know how I've done that. Ndoye, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi, and Chris Wood. Nico Williams is so good he's playing twice apparently. So Nico Williams is Anderson in midfield. Right, Ali, talk us through your thinking, and people can laugh at me in the comments as normal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a kind of a relatively familiar structure for Forest. I think the pinch point. I mean, some of those players just kind of pick themselves. So obviously the goalkeeper, two centre backs, Murillo if he's fit. Williams is probably going to have to switch sides because of the injury to Ola Aina. Zinchenko we talked about earlier. So you know the kind of back five I think kind of picks itself. Depending on match fitness and how much they think they can get out of Douglas Luiz, I think he really has to start. Anderson, has been our best player of the season, and he's now doing it for England as well. Which the level of player, the level he's found at the moment, he's just an automatic pick. Gibbs White, as I say, I kind of throw selection for these things out to my brother and his partner, who are both City Ground regulars. My brother wondered whether Gibbs White needs a kick up the backside and needs to start on the bench. I think that's I don't know if that gives you a kick up the backside or that's another, kind of another hammer blow to your confidence. So I would stick with there. Ndoye, it's the right wing was where I was actually struggling the most, because Ndoye had such an encouraging start to the season, goal on debut, gets the assist away at Palace as well. So I do worry about. It's harsh on him to always compare him to Elanga, but we've lost some pace down that side as a result, and that's probably the one question mark. I thought Hutchison. I'm quite encouraged by Hutchison, but he's a player that played the full 90 last night, which suggests to me he's not going to be picked for this game. Hudson-Odoi, he's having an interesting season. I'll go back to that point I made about Gibbs White and the new contract. Hudson-Odoi has also just signed a new contract, and he's just picked up the number 7 shirt, right? So he is, again, this is a big moment for him in his career. This is a big pinch point in his season where I'm expecting him to kick on. And I thought, particularly against West Ham, I know it's not easy, but when you're a right-footed player playing on the left flank, but when you are right-footed playing on the left flank, your decision-making has to be spot on. And I thought his decision-making against West Ham was questionable. Equally, he could have scored the goal last night and put us out of sight. So I'd still stick with him. And then probably, Igor Jesus, is pushing Chris Wood. I thought he played well last night. And again, it wouldn't surprise me massively if Ange pulled him off to start him on the weekend. But I'm a massive Chris Wood fan. He's one of the absolute leaders on the pitch for this team. It is his old club. He did score twice there the last time we played at Turf Moor. So I wouldn't be dispensing with Chris Wood just yet. But there is clearly competition, which is the competition for his spot that we were all craving last year. And now he's got it. So that's a good thing. That's my team. Right wing, I could give or take. And yes, I went for Elliot Anderson, not Neco Williams in midfield, which is definitely on you.
Yes, well, it will be on the next graphic as well. He's on that one as well. I've just seen.
Oh, brilliant.
If Murillo's out, who are you putting left centre half, Ali? Morato, Cunha, Boly, Abbott, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Morato, you'd say, is more acclimatised to the league and to English football, and that might be the safer one. Cunha, he's going to have to get game time at some point. I don't know, but I'd probably play it safe and play Morato just in terms of that being more acclimatised to the league. But then equally, how are you going to get that experience for a player like Cunha if you don't play? So I don't mind either way, but clearly Murillo is first choice, and we're all hoping that he's fit. And not just sort of fit to start, but fit to really have quite a commanding performance for Forest, because they will need one at the back.
Yeah, hopefully so. Ange's press conference should be it's normally at 1:30 on a Thursday. I don't know if they'll stick to that, because obviously they played last night as well, but we'll keep an eye out for Murillo updates. I'll put my team on screen. This is Pete's team as well, and then I'll ask Temps what he's thinking. So mine and Pete: Sells, Williams, Milenkovic, Murillo, Zinchenko. I would put this is going to be a Bazball analogy again, isn't it? But Morato's the safe pick with the ceiling where you probably know it's fairly high. It could be fairly high. It could be quite low with Morato. Cunha's the one where he could be Jacob Bethel, and you just throw him in there and you think this kid's got it and he's going to be a star, and I'm going to back him to the hilt. We've seen bits of it from him, but it feels like a risky pick that could really blow up. So the safe pick's Morato. So I guess I'd go for Morato, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Jair Cunha. If Murillo's out, it wouldn't be Boly and it wouldn't be Abbott for me. Midfield, Douglas Luiz, and obviously that's Elliot Anderson. Apologies again. Right midfield, Bakwa, Gibbs-White, Ndoye, and then Chris Wood in attack. And just a few bits on those players. I thought Bakwa, I assume he's bought off early because he's earned a start. I've been really impressed with him so far, and I really want to see what he can do in a starting 11 in a Premier League game. Really stood out last night again. Just moments that show he's going to be a potential star for us. I like Ndoye from the left. I said this the other day. I think he can score, like Brennan did for Spurs under Ange, quite a lot of goals at the back stick or arriving in the 6-yard box. So I'm interested to see what he does from the left. Gibbs-White, he's obviously running out of lives, but I don't think I'd be dropping him yet. He needs a performance. I do think the thing people say he doesn't want to be here. I don't know if I buy it. I mean, he came on last night and he's flying around. I think he's out of form and frustrated, and he's trying to do too much. There was a stupid booking he got, and I referenced at the start, he couldn't take the second booking when they broke 5-on-2, which he should have taken. And playing in that deeper role was interesting that Ange put him on. I assume he brought him on to try and get him into some form, but it didn't really work, so he didn't make a positive impact. But I would stick with Gibbs-White for this game and probably the Sunderland game as well, and then reassess it if he's not playing well. And the strikers, I wouldn't have a problem if it's any of the three. I thought Callum Wendo did really well when he came on and was unlucky not to get a goal. Igor Jesus looked really bright, obviously took his first goal really well, and the second one was a tap-in. I'd like to think if Chris Wood played, he'd have scored as well, and I back Chris Wood in this game and the next game again, and I don't think you want to rip it up too much and make too many changes. So for me, short-term Chris Wood is perfectly fine, but long-term it might be a different question, and I could see Jesus or Callum Wendo, probably more Callum Wendo actually, being the longer-term option. But that's my thinking. Temps, what would your team be different to that one, and what are your thoughts on how you want us to set up?
We're only falling out about wingers. I'd play Callum Hudson-Odoi on the left and Bakwa on the right off the back of what I've seen so far. I don't think there's much between the three, and we've all chosen different combinations. But what is clear is far more interest in seeing that change of gear from the bench when whichever one of the three is left out comes and has his 25 minutes. I think that's one of the big forward leaps we've made is bench impact, particularly in wide areas, having replaced Elanga with Bakwa and Ndoye. Beyond that, we all hope Murillo's fit, because the debate beneath him is nuanced, and there's a significant drop off from the levels of Murillo and Milenkovic to everybody else. So I really hope that he comes through. And Douglas Luiz, it's a brave selection off the back of one game against Swansea, but I think he can just offer so much. He can help us get a little bit more out of Elliot Anderson. He has the vision. He's physically tough and determined. His set piece consistency and quality is extremely high. So I'd agree with everything you boys have said about the spine of this team, the back four and the keeper. And it's just a nuanced debate between the wingers. But Hudson-Odoi and Bakwa get the nod from me. And I expect them all to share game time and put up with an element of rotation in the weeks ahead.
I think the thing about the wingers, as Ali and Louise, the game today is you don't really have to play these players for 90 as well. You only need to get 60 minutes out of them and you can make a change. It's interesting. I listened to an interview with Arteta after they Arsenal beat Bilbao. He talks incessantly about starters and finishers, and he said the finishers, as he calls them, are more important than the starters, arguably. And these are the times, I guess, we're going to see that, aren't we? I hope with, Hudson-Odoi off the bench, or Bakwa off the bench, or Callum Mwendo, and players like that. The whole squad's got a proper role here, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be interesting for. I mean, if you actually go back to last season, we didn't. There weren't the options off the bench, and that is one of the reasons why the season kind of fizzled out. It's also interesting. None of us have picked Sangare in our starting 11 there, because Sangare has always sort of slightly baffled me as a player, because his kind of return to the team did kind of coincide with the form dropping off, and we've barely even spoken about him because we've all kind of left him out. But there is every chance that he might even start, because that he is a kind of the shirt is his in a way. But yeah, going back to your point on that rotation, starters and finishers, I don't mind that mentality. I think there is enough football this season with the European competition that players should be kept happy, but it is going to be a bit of a test of Ange's man management and his player management, and how he keeps people motivated, and how he ensures that players who don't start games don't feel like they're not central to the overall plan. And that is it's going to be getting that full squad buy-in, particularly for the attacking players, because there are definitely more players than spots, as we know.
Sangare could start attempts, couldn't he? Obviously, I think the thing with Louise for me is you could just see that bit of class. I don't think he had even had an 8 out of 10 game. I thought he had a good solid 7 out of 10 game, but you can see there's bits of his game that I want to see starting more regularly. Is that your thinking on him versus Sangare?
Yeah, just those moments, having the ball in traffic, the way he'll beat a man on the edge of the middle third and power into midfield. I think he's a game breaker. And I think he offers far more going forward than Sangare, and does retain some of the situational awareness. He's, I suppose, like Elliot Anderson in the sense that he can make an impact in both boxes and between both boxes. He's a true all-round midfielder. And I think unearthing 2 of those in the same side can be really, really potent. So brave selection. Sangare has done okay in particular points, but I don't think it's a good look for Ange to continue to pick the same personnel. I think he needs to make some changes to the team that are his own. And the obvious one is plugging in Douglas Luiz. He's got the pedigree. He's shown in a very small flash last night what he's all about. And I think if we trust him and give him more minutes in the Premier League and our central midfield, he'll repay us very, very quickly. It's a brave selection, but one that I hope that Ange makes.
Just before we go to final thoughts then, if you've enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe, do consider membership, join us on Discord, lots of good chats there, or give us a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Ali, any final thoughts on the game? Anything else you want to say on anything Forest related before we go?
Not massively, other than it's just 3 points, and as I said, a point away from home, fine, but 3 points would really we need this season to start and actually have a bit of a catalyst, because at the moment we're just kind of ticking along, hoping that things are going to kind of fall into place. I think we need a kind of statement performance sooner rather than later.
Temps, anything from you before we go?
3 points by any means. I think it just arrests the narrative, gets us to where we need to be, and back looking forward. So much to look forward to next week with the Batiste trip and the games on the other side of that. I just want to see 3 points by any means. And I think, a hallmark of bravery and positive change would be the injection of Douglas Luiz. That's what I really want to see come 2:00 on Saturday.
Yeah, it feels like a really big game. 3 points by any means kind of always implies a nasty, ugly 1-0. I don't think we're going to get those under Ange. So if we're going to win games, it's going to be Keegan-esque and, going back to the mid-90s, Keegan at Newcastle type fun. I'm not sure we'll see too many 1-0s, although he did finish the season playing that way. But yeah, that's just all into the unknowns of where we are as a club. So that's why we really need to win this game, or certainly not lose. It'll be really, it's going to be a rough week of podcasting next week, until Betis anyway, if we lose this one. Right. Thanks for everyone's company. We shall be back tomorrow. Opposition preview with Will, the Burnley fan. Looking forward to hearing what he's got to say. In the meantime, Ali Martin, thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. We'll have you back on soon, especially now that, well, I can say now the cricket season's finished. It doesn't finish for you, does it? Because I assume where are you off to with England next? Do you know?
Well, it's next stop. A couple of bits to tie up with this domestic season, but it's
Australia.
Flying to Perth on November the 14th for 2 months to watch Ange ball in the Ashes. Sorry, Baz ball in the Ashes.
I'll try and get you on before Australia anyway. Temps, thank you very much.
No problem, mate. Some life Ali Martin has, isn't it? Just chasing the sun, watching England in warmer climes. He doesn't go anywhere where it typically rains between September and March, I know. But yeah, always good to see a Forest fan in the press box. Enjoy our chats, and let's hope we're on together again before too long, Ali.
Yeah, enjoy today. Lots of fun, but thank God the stream is ending. There you go. Right, thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day, and if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.